Mom, please assist me. My daughter sobbed. She had only been married for 3 months when she unexpectedly appeared at my door in the middle of the night. Her face was swollen and covered in bruises, and I was horrified by how she had changed. As I heard her story, I shuddered with fear. I'm Linda, 50, and I divorced when my daughter Emma was still a little child. I raised her while working full-time, and despite Emma's reserved nature, she has a strong heart and works hard. His promise to make her content was a lie, and I vowed to exact revenge on those who had done this to my precious daughter. Emma's presence has been my motivation, helping me move forward even in difficult times. So when she told me there was someone I wanted you to meet, my heart jumped with joy. Emma introduced me to a man named Jack who worked at one of their companies, and she was able to secure a job there through her persistent efforts. I've come today to ask for your blessing for Emma and me to get married, he said, barely introducing himself. Emma was only 23 at the time, and he was 7 years older than my daughter. He looked dashing in his suit and greeted me cheerfully. At first glance, he seemed serious and sincere. Been seeing Jack for around half a year. You're both still young. Don't you think it's a little early to be thinking about the future? I tried to gently dissuade them, but he straightened his posture and looked me in the eye. I can't think of anyone else but Emma anymore. I honestly expected to just meet her boyfriend, so I was shocked. Believe that I will never meet another amazing woman like her. He begged me, his face solemn, how much he loved my daughter Jack, saying, I feel the same way, Mom. Please give us your blessing for our marriage. Emma added, if the two of them had already reached a decision, I would support them. After hearing Emma's request, I agreed to their relationship. Thank you very much, and I swear I'll make Emma joyful. I couldn't help but grin as I watched my daughter and him look at each other with joy. But once Jack departed, I was unable to truly celebrate their marriage, and I began to wonder if this was really all right. Isn't it premature? But I've heard that many parents experience conflicting emotions when their kids get married. To be honest, I had assumed my daughter's marriage was still a ways off, so I probably wasn't mentally ready. They seemed so happy together, so I had faith that everything would work out. After we met Jack's parents, I calmed myself, and everything went without a hitch towards. Both of them were only kids at the wedding, and Emma proved to be a big hit with Jack's parents, who had always desired a daughter. After we get married, Mom, I'm considering moving in with Jack's parents. Emma mentioned that although it's good that they like her, it appeared like they had proposed living together. Are you sure about this? I don't have any experience, but I've heard that it can be difficult to live with in-laws. I said I get along with his parents and Jack was there, so I wasn't worried. She replied, well, I'm sure you can handle it, which I assumed she was sincere about and always loved by her elders. In addition, their family home was only a 20-minute drive from my house, so I felt reassured that I could go right over if anything happened. So after the wedding ceremony, I assumed Emma would be working hard at her new life in her in-laws' house. However, a month or so after she moved in, things started to change, and even though I sent Emma messages, I hardly ever received a response, so I didn't want to get involved. Too much, but I was worried, so I called her mobile phone. To my surprise, Jack answered the phone when I asked if I might talk to my mother-in-law. He responded, I'm in the bath right now. Don't worry, she's doing fine. His tone was gentle, but somehow it left no space for disagreement, so I hung up without hearing the voice of a daughter Jack's mother had invited me to visit at any time. So I went to their family home over the weekend when there were still no messages or calls from Emma. Jack's mother curtly replied over the intercom that Emma was out with Jack, and I apologized for coming so abruptly. Do you know what? When will they return? I asked, and all I got was a big sigh. You should call before coming. I don't know when they'll be back. She seemed to have a point, and I was forced to leave. I wondered if I was worrying too much, but it seemed like Jack's and his mother's attitudes had changed from before the wedding, and after much consideration, I decided that hearing her happy voice would help me get over this negative emotion. To my amazement, when I called Emma's place of employment, I was informed that she had already quit. In addition, they claimed that we were in trouble since she quit so abruptly. Emma would never have quit her job in such a manner when she received the job offer from her dream company, and we both shed happy tears. In addition, Emma was eager to balance work and housework, so her abrupt resignation didn't make sense. Something is clearly wrong, but what should I do? Even if I went back to Jack's house, I wasn't sure what to anticipate. If only they would let me see Emma while I was considering calling the police. The incident happened 2 days after I found out about my daughter's resignation. The doorbell rang in the middle of the night, Who could it be at 2 in the morning? I looked curiously at the intercom screen, and there was. Although it was dark and I couldn't see well, Emma appeared to be the figure. I hurried to the door and loudly opened it. What happened? I've been worried since I couldn't get in touch with you, Mom. I apologize, my happiness at seeing my daughter was fleeting. Emma's face had swelled and was completely covered in bruises. What in the world happened to you? You're in such a state. My daughter shook and sobbed, and I tried to calm her down by rubbing her back without saying anything. Emma then started talking haltingly, her voice choking with emotion. As I listened, it became evident that Jack's attitude had changed right away after the wedding. He said, "You've come here as a wife, so you should serve us and treat her like a slave." I had suspected that Jack and his parents were to blame for the terrible state she was in when Emma ran to my house. But when I learned the truth, I shuddered in rage. I didn't want to bother you, but I'm sorry to see my daughter cry like this. I resolved in my heart never to forgive Jack and his parents since they had promised to make her happy but had harmed my daughter so badly. For the time being, I left Emma to rest and made the decision to face Jack's family. I felt a thirst for vengeance come up inside of me. I wanted to make them endure the agonies of hell. The following morning, as soon as it was light, we went to the hospital to receive treatment for her injuries, and I then drove my daughter to their house. As anticipated, they were agitated upon noticing Emma's absence. "So you took her after everything?" Jack's father yelled angrily upon realizing that I was at the entrance. "Could you explain Emma's condition?" Ed's next response to my harsh question was unfaithful. When I saw my daughter standing in front of me with her cheeks still swollen and bandages covering her wounds, she looked pathetic. They appeared to become aware of the neighbors' attention and led us into the house. The three of them hesitated for a second before revealing their genuine selves. Jack's mother sneered at Emma and stated, "We were simply giving her a little discipline because she wasn't doing her job well." "What are you saying, Jack? Didn't you promise to keep my daughter content as long as she played her wifely role?" "She was too busy with her work, so I sent her a letter of resignation." Jack gave a chilly response. Emma had not resigned from her position willingly. She sobbed as she recounted that Jack had filed her resignation without telling her, and that by the time she realized it, it was too late. It seems that Jack didn't like that Emma was arriving home later than him and that her work had grown busy. Emma was putting in a lot of effort since she was content to work for her ideal firm. My worry is that she must quit if she is unable to balance both. Jack claimed that he had done nothing wrong, and he was correct. The other day, it took her an hour to prepare dinner. She is incapable of performing any household task correctly, and Jack's father joined in the attack, causing my daughter's shoulder to shake. If that were the case, couldn't Jack's mother have helped her? When I arrived here as a bride, my mother crossed her arms and said, "I was made to do everything and told to learn through experience." Yes, it's a generational shift, but I was taking excellent care of her. Jack's father said they nodded agreeably to confirm their innocence. In addition to Jack's father, who was already retired and at home, constantly watching Emma and interfering with everything she did, including taking away Emma's phone so she couldn't tell me about it when I visited their home, Jack's mother had forced Emma to do all the housework while doing whatever she wanted. Despite the awful treatment, Emma had hoped that Jack would change and help her someday. However, the treatment from her in-laws only got worse, forcing her to eat leftovers and accusing her of wasting gas. Emma had also been restrained to keep her from going outside. When Emma could take it no more, she told them that this wasn't right and barely allowed her to use more than a trickle of water for showers. When my daughter objected, they labeled her impolite and gave her a harsh slap on the cheek. They also promised to re-educate her, so they took turns. This resulted in the painful injuries on her body. While covered in wounds, she was ultimately released after being beaten all over her body. Emma thought her life was in jeopardy, so she escaped from her in-laws' house when all three were asleep. She walked for more than an hour, almost escaping with her life, before reaching her house before the wedding. They lavished Emma with attention, but why did they do that? I thought Emma would make a good servant, but Jack said nonchalantly that his mother was really disappointing, so she must have learned her lesson. Changed so much, I can't accept this. When I confronted them with a strong tone, the three looked at each other and smirked from the start. Incident, let's give her another chance, please. Emma gazed at the three of them and said, "How dare you speak to us like that when an angry person is angry?" Jack's father said that they looked at each other and laughed so much that I couldn't forgive them any longer before I could react. "Jack, I didn't mention it before I said, but when I was younger, I was on the verge of making it to the Olympics in wrestling, but I had to give it up due to an injury. I quickly put my daughter in a hold and pinned him to the floor, immobilizing him as he struggled. His parents were shocked by my quick movement. Pressure on Jack, who was restrained, and he began thrashing his arms and legs while crying. When I released my hold, he sagged and sat feebly. How pitiful. Who should I deal with next? I said, cracking my knuckles. His parents sobbed, covered their heads, and trembled uncontrollably as I carefully walked up to them, pleading with them to stop. I sent my daughter off hoping she would be happy, but I will never forgive you for putting her through this. All three of them recoiled at my aggressive behavior. Emma followed my example and held the divorce papers in front of Jack, saying, "What are you talking about? I absolutely won't divorce you." He refused to look at me. Turning red, I took my daughter to the hospital this morning, where she received a medical certificate for her injuries. I also filed a police report, saying, "We have no fault in this, so we'll fight it to the end." I told them cautiously, observing each of the three in turn, and at this point they began to perspire heavily and scream, "Please stop," and Emma looked at them with disgust and said, "What about our reputation? I want a divorce as soon as possible." We collected Emma's belongings and made our way to the entrance, where we heard Jack's pathetic voice behind us, but Emma and I left her in-laws' house without looking. Following that, the divorce was successfully finalized. Emma was awarded $50,000 from Jack, the police report was accepted, and the three of them were questioned by the police. However, they were soon released, and I heard that the police also visited their home to examine the scene, which became the subject of gossip in the. When Emma told her old coworkers about Jack's abuse of her, the word got out to his company, which was their client, and Jack was taken off the fast track to promotion. Meanwhile, Emma gradually recovered from her physical and emotional injuries at our house before beginning to move on. At this point, the neighborhood was being viewed with suspicion. Forward to locate a new job, as my life is still far from over too. In reality, I have resumed my training because I want to participate in wrestling once more. They exchanged glances and laughed, which was plenty. Was no longer able to forgive them before I could react with rage rising from every bodily part of mine. Emma gazed at the three of them and expressed